Welcome to Interviews from Mexico. I'm Laura Carlson, and I'll be your host as we look at cutting-edge issues with the men and women who know them best, here on Telesur. Every year, some 400,000 Central American migrants come up through Mexico. They're fleeing situations of persecution, violence, and hunger. But the situation in Mexico is not much better. Central American migrants are subject to attacks, extortion, robberies, and even assassination. Some are lost along the dangerous migrant routes. The Caravan of Central American Mothers brings mothers up from the Central American countries to search for their missing sons and daughters in Mexico. Sometimes they find them, and when they do, it's a life-changing moment. Join us on today's show, where we'll talk to Marta Sanchez, the founder of the Caravan for Central American Mothers. To talk about immigration through Mexico, and specifically the Caravan of Mothers, we're very pleased to have with us today in the studio Marta Sanchez Soler. Marta, thank you so much for being here with us on Interviews from Mexico.
Thank you, Laura. It's a pleasure working with you, as always.
Marta is the founder of the Caravan of Central American Mothers and the coordinator of the Mesoamerican Migrant Movement. Marta, this is the 13th year of the Caravan coming through Mexico. How did this get started?
When my husband and I were living in Los Angeles, California, and we moved back to Mexico.
You're a migrant yourself?
We're migrants. And in Los Angeles, we worked with migrants, mostly Mexicans, because the area where we were is mostly Mexican, although some Central Americans. But when we got back, we realized that there was a huge problem with the Central American migrants in transit through Mexico. Mm. So we decided to study it. And we started going through the migrant routes, and we started in El Salvador because we wanted to see what was going on the migrant route. So we started in El Salvador. And we found in Honduras that there were 3 mothers that we met doing our research that had come to Mexico, to the border, with no money, no documents, no help from anybody, looking for their disappeared sons and daughters in transit. So when we got back and studied the whole thing, we decided that this was an effort that needed support, that had to have support. And so we started helping them. The first caravan was pretty much like they were doing it. We were going on commercial buses, commercial carriers. They had no papers, and we had no way of getting them documents at that time because we didn't have any political clout in this country yet, in Mexico. And one priest that was a friend of ours that had come with us to this research trip went with us on this first caravan. And when we found an immigration post that was getting people down and sending them to the migrant stations, I would tell him, get your stuff on. And so he would put his robe and his, whatever they call the and so ponte tus trapitos. So he would put his stuff, and we would challenge
that usually worked?
Yes, it worked. And other times we just turned our ID cards and said press. So we showed our press passes, and it worked.
And back then, we're talking about a smaller number. This was just a handful.
No, this was a handful.
Yeah.
This was a handful of mothers. The first caravan was 6 mothers. Mm-hmm. And they were all from Honduras.
Oh, all from one country.
From one country, yes. And so in time, the following caravan was from Salvador, and it was a full bus. And then we started trying to get all those countries together. It was not easy. They have their own challenges and their own issues. So it was not easy to get all the countries
Honduras,
to come.
El Salvador, and then Guatemala.
Guatemala, and finally Nicaragua. So it grew. We got a lot of attention, and eventually we got enough political clout to have the mothers documented as we cross the border so that we don't have any problems. And the Mexican government, we ask only two things of the Mexican government: that they provide security for the caravan.
Very important.
Because we were the first ones to be at the San Fernando site in 1912. On the day of the death, we were there. The mothers were blessing the place, and we had a ceremony.
In 2012, yeah.
At the year anniversary of the massacre of San Fernando.
One of the most dangerous parts of Mexico.
So dangerous that the municipal police were supposed to take us exactly to the site, because this is off the road and there's many little country roads. And we didn't want to be wandering around looking for the place. So we got the municipal police to take us, and they quit. They left us there. They went. And so they said,
The police.
The police.
We're afraid to be there, and they left you.
They told us, it's because you leave, but we stay here, and our lives are threatened.
A lot of people don't realize that there are places like that, a lot of places like that.
A lot of places. So we asked for the Mexican government to give us all the security forces that we need. I asked them to provide cross areas so that we're not in the hands of the local police. Because there's a lot of collaboration between organized crime and some of the local police. So if we're in one place, the police are from another place. And in the most dangerous places, we even get the armed forces to go with us.
So this has really grown from having, as you said, no clout in the beginning to the government being obligated in a way to take care of you along the road.
Yes.
That's because of the publicity and the visibility that you've gained, I imagine.
Yes, and the collaboration of the media people. They have been wonderful. And so I think we were key players in putting this problem in the Mexican agenda.
This caravan grew from just a few mothers that you met in towns in Honduras, and now there's over 30 mothers and fathers and relatives on the caravan, and you've got the support of the Mexican government, at least for the basics of security. The mothers that are now part of this, how did this begin to snowball? How did the word spread that this effort existed, and how did you find the people who were in this tragic situation of having disappeared relatives?
Well, what happened is that as an after effect of the caravan is the training that these ladies get through all the activities and all the talks and all the exercises that we do in the caravan. So when they went back to their countries, they started organizing. And these little tiny organizations that had nothing are now political forces in their own countries. And this is a byproduct of the caravan, and a byproduct that we are very, very proud of. Because
that's a multiplier effect.
It's a multiplier, and not only that, when we started working with these mothers, the only thing they could do was cry. And cry and looking for their loved ones. And they couldn't do anything else than cry. So from victims, they became human rights defenders. And you see them on the stage, and you see them challenging the Mexican government, and you see them stating what the real problems of migration are. And so it's marvelous to see this process of empowering. And on this caravan, they've been reflecting on that. And they say it's a space of empowerment, it's a space of clarity, and it's a space of sanación, which means healing. So this is one of the most rewarding things. Of course, getting them together because we do find migrants, and we specialize.
You found more than 200 during the caravans. Tell us about that process.
We have one character in our organization whose name is Rubén Figueroa. And Rubén Figueroa just happens to have a special talent to go right to the point. We get the information of somebody missing, and as we look through the files, Rubén says, I'm going to find this one.
So he's a natural-born detective.
He's been developing also all through these years, and he finds them. He really does find them. So
what's the number now? 200?
275, I think, to date.
75 families.
And what we do is we specialize in looking for the people who are alive, because there's all the forensic aspect of this that we go into it because we have to, but it's not our specialty. Our specialty is reuniting families. And so that's what we do, and Rubén has a special talent. And also, what we're doing now is creating our own database, because the organizations not always give us the information that we need to find their people. For instance, we ask questions that are more personal and that tell us more about the person than height and weight and age and all that really doesn't help much. So we look for questions like, what is he or she like? Does she smile? Does he smile? What were their hobbies? What were the things that they like to do? And for instance, somebody told us that one person liked cockfighting, and we found them in a palenque.
Really?
Yeah. So we ask different kinds of questions that are what really helps us find them. So what we do now is we go to the little towns, and we set up in Central America, and we set up a table in the park, and we put up a sign saying, we ask for information about disappeared persons so that we can help you find them. And in less than a week, we bring 200 files documented with everything. So that gives you an idea of the dimension of the problem.
Yeah. And these are cases that can go back decades, or they can be just months old.
Yeah, we like more the older ones, because there was not so much violence, and the likelihood of us finding them alive is greater than
it's
the
much
newer
worse
one.
Now, in terms
is
of
much more
there's
now
much
in
higher
terms
possibility
of finding them dead.
Yeah,
Finding. Yeah.
That's a very sad comment on the situation we're facing today in Mexico. To give our viewers an idea, could you describe a case on this caravan of a reunion?
There is a lady called Clementina Murcia. She's one of the ones that really became a fighter.
She's been on the caravan for several years?
5 years. This is the 5th year. She had 2 sons missing. One left 16 years ago, and the other, I think it's 20 years ago.
Oh.
We found the one that was missing for 16 years. And the reunion was something very, very special.
Incredibly emotional, I'm
Incredible, and much more because of the character, the temperament of what Murcia became. She really is a human rights defender, and she really is a fighter, and she really is the one that can stand up with the governor and tell him, you are responsible for what happens in your territory that you govern. So you have to give us answers. We have a right to the truth. And so it was a very emotional one because there was so much love. It was like they never left each other. They were never apart. And the son was crying all the time. It really was very emotional.
Okay. Marta, we were talking about a profile of a mother who found her son, but what about the son? What about the sons and daughters? How did they go missing in the first place?
In the years that we've been working and on the 270 some cases that we have found, we have only found one that was by choice. He didn't want to meet his family. One. There's a million reasons, but I'll give you one example. This little guy, 17 years old, fell off the train and was picked up by somebody who took them to the hospital and then took him to his home. Well, this man happened to be one of the caciques of the area. And he took them to a little village on top of a mountain, and he had them there for 17 years working without paying and without letting him go anywhere.
Slavery.
Slavery. When we found him, because the cacique fell ill and started going to the doctor, so he found the space to come down to town, and through friends, they gave us the tip that he was there. So we went. 17 years, no pay. He didn't talk for the first week in the caravan. We took him with us in the caravan. So we got him out. We got him out of the hands of the cacique. But he didn't even look up. He couldn't see anybody straight to the eye. He did embrace his mother, but to her, he couldn't talk.
Oh my gosh.
So by the time the caravan ended, he was very integrated and they had started talking, mother and son. But this is one example of what happens. Another example is being on the slave trade of sex service, the trata. And there's many issues, but most all have the common denominator of some huge problem happening that broke the communication. So it's not that they don't want to communicate. Also, when they left, there were no cell phones. Some had one phone in the whole village. Some had no numbered streets. So it's not like it's very easy.
Even
and also,
now in some remote villages, it's not that easy.
And also, you have to think that these are very vulnerable people and very marginal people. If they had resources, I'm sure they could do something. But there's nothing available to them.
On both ends.
On both ends, because here they still are undocumented, they still are very poor, and they still are carrying the trauma of something terrible that has happened.
That made them leave in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah. And all the terrible things that happen along the route.
Yes.
Well, so we're talking about cases, and we know this happens in Mexico, of human trafficking, of human slavery even, of sex trafficking. What is going on with the Mexican government that this has become a no man's land where all sorts of predators are preying on the migrants that come through here?
But it's not, we wish that it was only the migrants. It's not only the migrants. This is happening to the Mexican population also. The fact that they declare the war on drugs, the fact that they signed the Iniciativa Mérida, the fact that they put in place plans like Frontera Sur, south of the border, the fact that they're militarizing the whole country, has created a terror state. People are dying every day. There's the war against women that is going on in this country. How many women are dying every day? So we're living in no man's land. Nobody's governing. Nobody has control. This is why it's so difficult to go to some of the places that we're not going anymore, because we know that even if they tell us that we're going to have security, that security cannot be guaranteed.
And many people might find it contradictory that in the context of militarization is exactly when we've seen this increase in the violence and in the fighting that's going on in many parts of the country.
Well, the military is trained to go against the enemy. And if they put him in the middle of society, society is the enemy. Yeah. Most of the claims, complaints put in through the human rights commissions are against the military. Most of the forced disappearances registered are in the hands of the military. Also some of the police, but the bulk of them is the military. So if you keep militarizing the country, you keep putting somebody who's trained to kill the enemy.
Not to go through trials or arrests or investigations. No. Yeah. Of course, that's been a big issue just recently with the internal security law and people saying, look, this isn't working, this is a disaster. What
well, not only is it unconstitutional, it's ineffective, and we know that it's going to increase the problems that we're facing now. Because now what they were doing illegally, the armed forces and the police, now it's going to be legal.
Yeah.
What they do.
It's a serious danger. Well, I want to use the 1 minute that we have left in the show to say, what can society do to support this effort and to help in the plight of the Central American migrants here in Mexico?
Well, the first thing is not to be afraid of them, not to be against them, not to hate them, not to think they're going to be harming them, because as in the United States and in Mexico, the migrant population has a lesser index of criminality than the people from the country. So migrants aren't coming to harm us. They are coming either to get away from their countries, either to go to the United States or to stay here because their lives are in danger in their countries.
As refugees.
And they're not interested in being criminals. They just want a little place where they can live, where they can have a better life for their families.
And we've seen both things here in Mexico. We've seen people who are very generous and open, and we also see a growing attitude of growing in the same way it is in the United States in some places of anti-migrant. Well, there's so much more we could talk about, but our time has run out. Marta Sanchez, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you very much, Latin America. And when you see a migrant, just welcome them. Don't hate them. Don't look the other way. They need a glass of water, or they may need some food, or they may need to have their feet healed from walking. So just for whoever comes, be welcome, because they're not our enemies. We're all migrants in a way.
That's so important, just those small changes of attitude. Yeah. And thank you. We'll be back next week on Interviews from Mexico.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Earth. Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur. Events told by their main figures. Research findings that transcend our people's views.
Monsanto se ve entre un buen sector de los agricultores como una gran amenaza.
Hay un montón de gente que se va a España a trabajar, a otro sitio a trabajar. No tienes que estar aquí siempre para que ayude a tu pueblo.
Desde entonces estoy buscando a mi nieto. Por gente liberada, he sabido que es un varón. Hace poco ha cumplido 6 años. Alguien lo tiene.
No somos simples estudiantes que venimos, entramos, escuchamos la clase de un profesor y después nos levantamos y nos vamos, sino que entendemos lo que pasa y sobre todo tenemos que ser sujetos de cambio frente a lo que pasa y tenemos que tener un rol en nuestra educación y en nuestra sociedad.
Telesur Report on Monday, only on Telesur. Telesur is branching out into new territories to democratize information. It's an insight into the world from a South American perspective.
We now broadcast live in English, and we want to share with you interviews with the region's most prominent figures, reports that highlight resistance and resilience, and in-depth analyses of political and social realities in Latin America and the Caribbean and the rest of the world.
Join us as we build a new communications model that serves to promote the integration of our people. Only on Telesur. The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transformed the world today. On Monday, only on Telesur. A sign of resistance to hatred and injustice, Bill Fletcher Jr. conducts a discussion and analysis space to reveal the social struggles of Black people on the Global Africa. Wednesdays, only on Telesur. Different causes motivate people to look for new horizons. We'll have the right to move freely beyond the imposed walls. Imaginary lines are shown between the hostility towards some
y la oportunidad de otros para forjar nuevos caminos.
Buscamos la respuesta a las inquietudes del siglo XXI.
between borders. Thursdays, only on Telesur. An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real lives. Saturdays, only on Telesur. Enjoy our programming from Monday to Friday, where you'll find the best information on innovation, conservation, human well-being, and human rights. Keep up to date on the latest innovations in science and technology with At the Moon. The habits and knowledge you need to live a healthy lifestyle are on Guide Your Body. Environmental consciousness is required to preserve our Earth. Undergo your transformation on Green Zone. We defend the struggles of peoples in resistance fighting for their rights. Between Borders. All about equity, diversity, and respect for identity on By Gender. Every day we feature a wide variety of content. Only on Telesur, the news source from Latin America and the Caribbean.